I live in South Louisiana, near a place called Cretin Point Plantation, pronounced Cretion, a notoriously haunted site with a rich history. You can even Google it. The plantation was allegedly used as a Civil War hospital, with its front doors serving as stretchers. There are also rumors about the infamous pirate Jean Lafitte being involved in something there. The area is steeped in history, and many people have reported seeing all kinds of strange things around the plantation. When my friends and I were about 16, we had a regular Saturday night tradition, drinking a lot of beer and driving around the dirt roads surrounding the plantation, which we called ghost hunting. This basically meant getting wasted, listening to rap music, chain smoking, and occasionally stopping to roll down the windows to see if we could spot anything unusual. One night, surprisingly, we actually did. We had stopped on the main road in front of the plantation, which is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but sugarcane fields, dirt roads, and the occasional trailer home. We got out of the truck, turned off all the lights, and started looking around. One of my friends suddenly pointed out something strange and began freaking out, telling us to come and see. He was pointing towards some small cabins to the side of the main house, which I believe were old slave quarters. There, in front of one of the cabins, I saw something bizarre, a woman, down on her knees. We were immediately puzzled, wondering why a woman would be kneeling in her yard at midnight. I ran back to the truck, grabbed some binoculars, and took a closer look. Sure enough, it was a woman. She very slowly stood up and began walking across the yard towards the house, moving with an eerie calmness, as if she had all the time in the world. Her arms gently swayed by her sides as she crept forward. That's when I noticed something even stranger. She seemed to be faintly glowing. It was odd because there was no full moon or anything that would explain the glow, and nothing else around her was illuminated, only her. She looked as though she was made of dim moonlight. Then I realized I could faintly see the shapes of the trees on the other side of her. She was slightly translucent. I handed the binoculars to my friends, wondering if I was just drunk or imagining things, but they confirmed that they saw the same thing. We watched her for what felt like an eternity, probably around 4 minutes. The longer we watched, the more the reality of what we were seeing sank in, and an intense, indescribable fear began to grip us. I wasn't the only one. My friends were visibly shaken as well. It wasn't funny anymore. Just as we started to really freak out, we heard the sound of gravel crumbling and saw headlights approaching from about 1/8 of a mile down the road. The second we noticed the car, without the lights even shining towards us or the woman, she simply dimmed out. It was like someone turned off a light. She just faded away. We all panicked and got out of there as fast as we could. I don't really believe in God or the afterlife or anything like that, but this experience sure as hell made, and continues to make, me question things. I have no idea what we saw, and I'm not saying it was definitely a ghost. We were drunk, 16 years old, and anything is possible. But it was by far the strangest thing I've ever witnessed, and you can make of it what you will. Your guess is as good as mine. This is a long one, but it's the most memorable experience I've ever had, and I've always wanted to share it. I hope you all enjoy it. When I was 6 years old, my family lived in a haunted duplex. Our cousins lived on one side, and we lived on the other. We believed that the spirits haunting the house were those of the family who had lived there before us. That's what I was told, at least. During that time, my dad would wake up very early in the morning, around 4 or 5 a.m., to go to work. I remember it was always still dark outside. I was a daddy's little girl, and we had a tradition. I'd wake up with him, we'd eat breakfast together, and then he'd leave for work while I'd go back to sleep. One day, I woke up and saw a dark figure standing in the doorway of my room. It turned and walked away. Thinking it was my dad, I got up and followed it down the hall. But when I reached the stairs leading to the living room, I noticed all the lights were off. I thought maybe my dad was in a hurry and had left without eating breakfast with me, so I turned around and went back to bed. This happened a few more times. Each time, I would get up, trying to catch my dad. Then one day, I asked him why he kept leaving without waiting for me. My dad looked confused and asked what I meant. I told him that I kept seeing him walk down the hall and leave without me. His expression changed, and he told me he had quit his job a while ago and hadn't been waking up early at all. At that point, I think my parents realized something was seriously wrong. Around the same time, I became very ill. I missed so much school that the school even threatened to expel me if I didn't return soon. Our family followed shamanism back then. We believed in spirits and often prayed to our ancestors. My parents enlisted the help of a shaman to perform a ritual to identify the figure I was seeing and understand what it wanted. The shaman revealed that it was the ghost of the woman who had lived there before us. Her family had all died in a tragic car accident. The shaman said that the spirit wanted to take my soul and that to stop this, I had to stop following it. At the time, I was too young to understand what was happening, and my parents didn't want to scare me, so they didn't tell me any of this until I was much older. After the ritual, my parents had me sleep in their room. I didn't think much of it because, well, I was a kid. That night, I woke up again and saw the shadowy figure. I got up to follow it, but halfway across the room, my dad woke up and called out to me, "Mio Kretrish Bucket, where are you going?" "I'm right here." I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and went back to bed. After that night, I never saw the figure again, and I quickly recovered from my illness. My parents must have taken the situation very seriously because, years later, my mom told me about a dream she had during that time. In the dream, she and an unknown woman were arguing. My mom was in her bedroom, and the woman was standing just outside the door. The woman's face was hidden in shadow, but my mom could see that she was wearing a long skirt. The woman was yelling at my mom to get out of her house, and my mom was yelling back that it was our house now. As a child, I was never scared. I never felt like I was in danger. But now, thinking back on it, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. The house has since been torn down, and it's just a flat piece of land now. Whenever my siblings and I drive past it, we always joke that it was probably demolished because no one could live there due to the hauntings. I work at a school that just might be haunted. There's an old auditorium on campus that we use for plays, musicals, and sometimes pep rallies. It's a pretty creepy place when you're alone, and many of the staff say that's where the ghost resides. For a while, I taught in a classroom right across the hall from it. During my first month there, something strange kept happening. My lights would shut off by themselves. The light switch was right by the door, so at first, I assumed it was one of my students messing with me. It always happened during my planning period, so I asked the teacher next door to tell his class to stop fooling around in my room. But one day, he shut the door, and it happened again. This time, I was sitting across the room, and no one was in the hallway. The lights just turned off on their own. A few days later, I was testing a website on my projector during my planning period because I wanted to see how the colors would display. Out of nowhere, my projector started moving. And I don't mean it just slid down, no, it moved up and down, then side to side. My classroom is on the top floor, so there's no room above mine that could explain it. At this point, I wasn't scared, just annoyed. So I shouted at whatever was causing it to stop messing with my stuff. The projector immediately stopped moving, and my lights never turned off by themselves again. The last incident happened in the auditorium itself. We were having a sort of field day, and I was running the auditorium as a makeshift movie theater. I was sitting in the back, keeping an eye on the kids, when I heard someone loudly whisper my name, like a stage whisper. But when I turned around, there was no one behind me. A student nearby said she heard it too, but we both just shrugged it off and kept watching into the Spider-Verse. Other staff members, especially those who've been there longer, have even more interesting stories to tell.